So if I was to break down a marketing process for y'all, again, this is I'm gonna structure this as if it's focused on the least income spend, like the least costly first, and then working our way up to let the business pay for the more expensive items, right? Through earnings now, not stuff you have to dish out right now. So what I would do is I would focus on D for D. And I would get to the point where at least adding 100 to 500 new properties on a weekly basis, and have a cycle put in place to where those 100 to 500 are being cycled on that weekly basis. So if you could do 100 this week, then all 100 need to be put through a process this week. Don't worry about trying to, don't try to add as many D for D as you can this week. Upload and figure out what you can handle and get the marketing out for those, and then next week do the same thing. That way you kind of end up having a rolling D for D against those properties, and then do that flow in the filter presets, like new D for Ds need to be marketed to, so on. Bring that down, which you might already be doing.
So
perfect. So once we have that, we're going to track, we're going to figure out our KPIs just for that alone. Okay, I don't look at like that process as the same as marketing to like Sensei Flow in your stack or direct mail from your stack. Keep these separated, because what we want to figure out is what data set is going to and ultimately be the most profitable for us initially, and then we're going to work to scale that up, and then outside of that, we're going to then add in the next marketing strategy to scale up. It's kind of the same thing with our data set, right? Like if we were to start with probates, we're going to end up working on it. We're going to track probates as probates. It doesn't matter if it's stacked. It doesn't matter if it's vacant. It doesn't matter if it's any of those things. It's solely probate because we're relying upon the source of which we're getting it from, not so much the vexation that's there, which is different than some of the other like teachings and stuff that I do. But by doing that, it allows us to have that one common denominator to figure out consistency from, rather than just saying, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on all my stacked. Okay, and then I got to wait until the end of the revenue cycle to figure out, okay, well, what were all the vexations that were on that revenue, that property that I closed? Oh, there was 4 of them. Well, I wonder which one I should do. Well, now I got to wait for 3 or 4 more deals to close to figure out, which ones were the most common problem, so I can focus on that. So instead, we're just going to market and solely focus on like probates, solely focus on the deal machine, and that's going to be like our common core. So first, deal machine, get to where you're doing 100 or 500, whatever that is, on a weekly basis. Get those coming in, focus on particularly the main locations that you want. So if you're doing flips on street A, make sure every single property on street A is there. It doesn't matter if it's like, got a nice roof. Like what you're doing is you're casing the properties. Okay, so for example, I don't know, we're just gonna use this cup as an example, which is from Jabe and Nick's barbecue in Niceville. If you guys are ever in this area, it's fucking awesome. Well, then again, you guys are in St. Louis, which has really good barbecue, so I don't know if it'll compete, but nevertheless. So on this cup, right, there's not too much damage to it or whatever. Somebody might annotate that there's no straw in it, which would be the common thing, right? Roof is damaged. What I would do when I'm D4Ding is I would annotate that there's green lettering on it, that there's red lettering on it, black lettering, that the cap is on it, that the straw is in or outside of it, right? What I'm doing is I'm not building a distressed list. I'm building a visual identifier list, okay? So you spoke about this kind of earlier before where you didn't own the data, right?
Yeah.
The valuable part, like if you're driving past all these properties already, the valuable part of driving past them isn't to see that one's fucked up. It's to see that one needs new windows, one potentially needs a new roof, one has a chimney, one has this. Like you're casing the whole thing, because once it does convert to a lead, you already know that it needs windows. You already know that it needs a roof. You already know that it needs gutters. You already know this. And at minimum, if you don't get any revenue from that, you just did all the work for every gutter company, every windows company, and every fucking roofing company in your market that now has the ability to leverage your data to produce leads for them. You see? So if you decided
to costs with the roofing company, like, hey, we buy houses on one side, roofing on the other.
Right. I mean, so that's the crazy thing about it is then you can literally start as you scale inside of the real estate space, just like you started in property management and now you're and then your acquisitions, now your own company, you might decide, hey, well, let's start a roofing company. you've already done all the preloaded work. All that heavy lifting has already been done. And now you can reach out to all the people who have roofs that they need to be done. Or you can sell that correct number to the person who needs gutters is really valuable to somebody who's a brand new company that's just getting started, right? Or even a seasoned company. So when you're doing that work, make sure that you're thinking about how it can really help you long term. In just the narrow vision, your acquisitions individuals can then automatically say, yeah, well, we know that it does need, window. So we're going to count that into the back. We're going to say that to the seller potentially right away. But, that's in the back of our mind that we know it's going to cost us X, Y, or Z because we've already seen the outside. Yeah, we don't know what the inside looks like, but we know all these capital expenditures on the exterior are there. So where a lot of people mess up on D4D, to summarize that, is just that they only add the super messed up properties. Those super messed up properties are the most annoying properties to deal with because they've been like that for a very long time. They're like that because they're not very good at making decisions. It's typically that middle of the road property that ends up closing with driving for dollars properties. It's the one where, okay, the grass is maybe a little long. Sometimes the grass is fine, but it needs windows. It's just dated. And sometimes it looks perfectly fine. So don't look at it like, hey, I just need to stress. At every single property, just case it and document it, and then filter your marketing down based off of those different variables. Start with the ones that need windows. Start with the ones that need roofs. Okay.
Yeah. As you say that, I mean, we were just talking about the other day how many properties we bought on streets where we done drive for dollars on, and we missed that property that we bought.
Yeah.
And it feels like we wouldn't have added it. But what you're saying is making a lot of sense. Like they all had 3-tab, shingles that were dated. They had aluminum windows and so forth. So yeah, that's a good point, man.
So we do have a database to drive for dollars. There's like 8,000 or something in there. I was just playing with this the other day. I took our top 10 favorite zip codes and made a new filter for that. And we're going to figure out a way to market to them. We have been adding about average 30 to 50 deals a week in Deal Machine, and they're going straight through the Sensei flow. Here's a thing. I'm having a hard time. Maybe it's just breaking old habits, trying to get in with the SIFT community and everything, but we're just used to having to do things at a larger scale to get results with whether it's mail or SMS, so like on average, we'd have to spend, our monthly budget on average for mail was usually $3,000 to $4,000, and it'd usually get a deal out of it. So last month, everything I sent to Ballpoint from SIFT, I think we spent like $800 on mail. We haven't got a single call out of it. So it's kind of mind effing me there. Like, okay, is this going to work, or do we need to go back to more bulk mail, or maybe it's just who we're targeting, like you said.
So here's the big thing with that. Okay. I've had it where I've sent 2,000. I've never got a call. I've had it where I've sent 142 and I got an $80,000 deal. Right. Like, it is one of those things where, again, I look at it like an annual, basis, like how much am I spending annually on direct mail and how much am I making, right? Is really how I look at it. I don't really look at it like a monthly basis, just because direct mail, sometimes it hits the next month and not the month prior. What I've noticed with specifically enveloped direct mail is that the inbound rate is much, much, much lower, period. Like, because it requires them to open it all the way. However, the calls that you do get from it are way more valuable than the calls if it was a postcard, right?
Really?
However, that does not mean that we don't do postcards. So to answer your question, like on the whole bulk versus niche side, you should still do bulk. You're just doing niche as well on top of that because you're wanting to make sure that those niche efforts are being hit. So do bulk against the masses, and then narrow down lower and say out of those masses, I'm still going to pluck out 100 or 200 or 300 or whatever of those individuals, and I'm going to do the extra effort of calling and texting and voicemailing them. But you're going to keep that bulk engine going. There's nothing wrong with doing the bulk engine. It's just making sure that when you're doing the bulk engine that it's being efficient, right? That you're doing it the right way. Where a lot of people mess up in bulk is that they just throw it out there and then if something happens and then they don't know how to fix it, so if you're going to send bulk, you just got to make sure you do things like not sending to vacant mailing addresses and making sure that you're sending every single month, right? And and just have a process around it, making sure that you're tracking those attempts. And hey, after like 3 or 4 direct mail attempts, we still haven't reached anybody. Let's go ahead and open up another layer of that and maybe try to call them, unless you're already calling through it in like bulk SMS or cold calling, right? So bulk is still fine. In fact, I think it's needed because obviously marketing is very impression based, because you can't really wait potentially until you finally reach a homeowner about a property that you've been calling for like 3 months and reaching out to the sister, daughter, and second cousin, to get a hold of them. It's just, your business wouldn't be able to thrive off of that. So in order to scale, you do need bulk. In order to become really high in net profits, you need to focus on niche and bulk sequential marketing. And in order to be the dominant in your market, you have to combine the niche, the bulk, both in a sequential way, but then add in online, right? And then that's how you get the rest of the market share. And in order to really conquer your competition, then you have to scale all that up at one time. And that's where you have guys spending a fuck ton of money, but really they're just doing it online and they're missing all the stuff down here. And that's why, people like you and I can still go in there and, still get deals, because they're not doing all of it compared to most, because they should have started down here, or they could start up here and then add in this bottom stuff. But by then they don't want to. They're too lazy to come back and add in all this stuff on the niche side.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like we're already halfway there. If we can add back in some more bulk calling and texting and, get the data figured out on the niche side. So, I mean, one thing
I would do. Go ahead.
Good. I was going to say, one thing, you always preach in the community is trying to get as much free data you can from the county, which I've found it very difficult in St. Louis. It's not as easy as just going on the site and pulling a list or calling up the clerk. You'd have to go on the legal site, Missouri CaseNet, and scrub it, and it's very time intensive. So I'm looking at either getting a VA to go that route and see how long it takes and if they can have results, or just bucking up and paying for some better data.
So
that's
a couple things on that. Again, simplify it if you can and say, hey, I don't really necessarily care so much about the problem right now. I'm just going to get every address if I can, right? So, going the prop stream and just circling all of the county and just saying, okay, it's 100,000 records. I'm just going to pull down every 100,000. I don't really care what it is. Last sold date is a core thing that you would want to know. Beds and baths and all this different kind of stuff. You upload that to REISift and you'll be able to hear this week actually filter by last sold date. So then if you want to pull a high equity base, you want to add in the fact that maybe it has more high equity, you just filter by making sure that its last sold date was prior to a certain date, right? Don't really worry too much about the equity side. And then in your marketing right now, don't really worry as much about the problems directly from the county. Obviously, free stuff is always better. But if it's really difficult to get, I always try to explain the more that we can remove the path of least resistance, right? The more that we can remove resistance in the operation, the better. So if it's a pain in the ass to kind of get information, doesn't mean that we don't worry about it. We don't try to add that in at some point, but we just kind of keep it away, keep it on our foresight. And then once we get to a point where we want to spend energy on it, then we start doing that. But until then, focus primarily on community-based. So find the core communities in your market. Go on the MLS if you guys can get access to it and figure out what is the communities in your market that have X amount of properties, typically 250 or more. Okay. And at least 10% of that community rotates on an annual basis. Okay. So 250 properties, that means 25 of them are selling on an annual basis. All right. And focus there. It doesn't matter if it's for flips. It doesn't matter if it's for, wholesale deals, realtor listings, doesn't matter. Fact is that community is rotating. And so get your marketing in there. And are you a realtor, Jake?
Yeah.
Okay. So even better. Are you, Brian?
No, just he's got the license.
Just he's got the license. Okay. So, I mean, it could be beneficial for you guys for proper rev share type stuff and everything. for you to get one as well, Jake. Or Brian. And so anything that comes in as an agent listing, right? Like list it instead. Don't care too much about it, especially right now. Right now is time to list properties more than anything, but more than that, it's like if you guys can offer that full service, there's going to be a lot of, because of the communities that you're going to focus on finding, a lot of those 25 probably need remodeled anyway. So offer that full service on, hey, yeah, we can list that for you. Hey, we can buy it cash from you, or hey, we can do this, right? Have all those options available